So here we are, and we're here on the 7th Sunday of Easter, almost at the end of the Easter season. The whole liturgical year of worship services, which begins on the first Sunday of Advent, as ours began on the first Sunday of Advent, way back in 2025. Gosh, that seems like another era. I don't know, time goes so fast. Anyway, but also doesn't. So it's all drawing to a close with the grand finale that happens with the coming of the Spirit on Pentecost, which we'll celebrate next Sunday. And then after that, filled with the Spirit we have received and renewed at Pentecost, it will be up to us to go forth in the power of that same Spirit, to live out the story of the Gospels we have heard throughout the cycle of the year, and change the world. Change the world. That's a tall order. But we're not alone in this wonderful call. The passage from the Gospel of John, which we've just read, thank you, Bossy, for the beautiful reading. This passage, the prayer of Jesus, marks a kind of distillation by the author of John of Jesus' last thoughts and prayers. His legacy, if you like. It's Jesus' final goodbye. Although we know it's not final, but when they heard it, they thought it was final. This is the legacy that Jesus leaves to the disciples. And at the conclusion, Jesus prays for the men and women seated around the table with him, whom he cherishes. Oh, that word. Don't you just love that word? That Jesus cherishes them. And through Jesus, the Creator, the God, cherishes us. Because deep within the heart of Jesus lies a love that will continue to cherish us throughout all of the ages to come. Jesus prays for each and every generation that will follow in his footsteps, including each and every one of us here present, here in the church, here in the square, here wherever you are. In Marilyn, I can see you in the middle of the green there. It's so beautiful. In the middle of creation, everything, every lichen, as we'll see in a moment, and as Rachel put it so beautifully, is cherished. And what is this prayer for the cherished followers that comes from the heart of Jesus? It is that we may be one, and that we may be sanctified or made holy in holding on to the truth. Now, after the prayer at the Last Supper, John's Gospel will describe the next steps. Jesus' arrest in the garden, then being dragged through the streets of the city to the judgment seat of Pilate, and then to death on Calvary. But the desolation of Calvary is not the end. For afterwards, again in John's Gospel, we are led to the empty tomb in the garden. And the story of Mary Magdalene on Easter Sunday morning, where she encounters the risen Jesus, who she thinks is actually the gardener. And you know, in some ways, this is a really apt title for the risen one, because this Jesus who walks in the garden of the Easter morning, the garden of resurrection, This Jesus really is the gardener of the new creation. This Jesus who has prayed to the Creator at the Last Supper that all may be one as we are one. This Jesus is one with the Creator. The same Creator who in the 2nd chapter of Genesis, that beautiful symbol, walked in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve in the cool of the evening. Just beautiful. And so, in the Easter garden, Jesus and Mary Magdalene represent a new Adam and a new Eve, and a restoration of the oneness of humanity and the Creator. But Easter, too, and the Sunday that we're celebrating today, is also the restoration of the oneness of humanity with creation. In the footsteps of Jesus risen from the dead, who is the gardener of this new creation, we are sent out to go and tread lightly on the earth, to cherish it. And as that poem, that inspirational poem that we read, thank you, Rachel, that we read, this poem puts it, in the quiet woods where the lichens live, Christ is laid bare. I can very easily relate to today's first reading, where the poet talks of walking in the quiet woods where the lichens lay themselves bare, because nestling amongst the bark of the trees and on the rocks and stones of the pond in High Park, which is close to where I live, there are lichens to be found. And I must say, in the last few days walking in the park, I've been taking note of the lichens, much more than I used to. And now I'm understanding more how amazing the lichens are as I read a bit more about them in preparation for preaching today. Lichens are amazing. They are a pioneer species. They are amongst the first living things to grow on the rocks and on areas that have been denuded by fires or other disasters. Back come the lichens, the first sign of rebirth, of resurrection. Because they're also, despite their size, they're tough, they're adaptable, and they like to share their space. They don't need roots, and they don't need a continuous supply of water. So they can grow in locations that are impossible for most other plants. So they grow on rocks, they grow in soil that's been denuded, and also sometimes you see them even on stone monuments. Places like this, there probably some out here around if we look for them. I don't know, they may have been cleared away. But they are a very important part of the stabilization and the roots of creation. They are the little ones. Even though they are the little ones, their voice goes out through all the world. And that's an interesting quote at the beginning of the poem, because that is the quote that is read on the feast days of the apostles. That quote, their voice goes out, And so lichens, in a way, are apostles too of the new creation, as so beautifully put. They speak the state of the world. They are stunningly diverse, but they're also intimately entwined and acutely attuned to the health of the world. They create soil. They shelter also millions of little critters that are vital to the forest's health. Millipedes, beetles, and microorganisms. But lichens also never harm any other plants. And they're useful to wildlife. As the part that Rachel held up, you can see how they're used as nesting for birds. They create soft, at this time of year, we think of, my granddaughter is delighted in telling me there's a bird's nest right outside her classroom. And the birds are just hatching. And she said there are 5 of them in the nest and they're all squashed in now. But they've got soft, of course the parents, they may not be lichens, but there are soft things that the birds are nesting in. They are the sisters of the voiceless, the soft spaces where little creatures can grow and flourish. Like Christ laid bare, they lay their hearts down. They breathe in the world, the sisters of the voiceless, the abused, the forgotten, the systematically displaced. So, lichens, like the Christ in the first reading, summon us to compassion. In the whole of Christ's story, from his birth in a stable to his death on the cross, didn't Christ also preach compassion, that he had come to be one with the little ones? So we cannot be one with Christ unless we too are one with the little ones, unless we cherish the precious ones that are dear to the heart of God. Now we know that we're reading these things, these beautiful things, and thinking about them, but we also know that we live maybe in a world that is deeply connected and yet it is profoundly divided. We share a lot of spaces. We're connected at every 24/7 through little things in our pockets that we take out, and we can literally connect to anywhere in the world. And maybe soon, who knows, after these moon expeditions and things, we'll be able to connect anywhere in space. It's wonderful, but it's also terrifying. And we still can remain distant from one another in the actual shared physical spaces where we live. And the temptation is, in our world, to maintain that distance by living through what's in our technology and not looking out at what is right next to us in the real physical people and creation that God is calling us to cherish. So let us, after thinking about these things today, let us listen to the voice of Christ that again in the poem vibrates through the bones of the world. Wow, that's an extraordinary image. But let us listen to the little ones who were described so eloquently by Kimberly in her sermon last week. We have a commission. Our voice is called to sound throughout the world, and we'll hear that again on Pentecost next week. We have a commission to move outward into the world as it is, not necessarily as it appears on our phones, but as it is out here in reality on the street and in the squares, in the gardens, and in the spaces that we live in. The world as it is, that is fractured and broken, but also beautiful and full of God's, the Creator's, hidden presence. To follow Jesus Christ is to live this movement as a way of life. To follow Christ is to have the courage to remain in relationship with the world as it really is, to cling to the rocks like the lichens do, and listen to the voice of Christ, vibrating soundlessly through the bones of the world, shaking us all with the fierce, sweet summoning of compassion. May it be so. Amen.
Sitting